home and the new, of course, home of Address for the Truth. We want to buckle down right now and discuss pertinent issues as far as the state of the nation is concerned. And just to remind us as well, in a historic show of political unity, President William Ruto and former Prime Minister Raila Odinga signed a landmark memorandum of understanding aimed at addressing Kenya's long-standing social, economic and political challenges. Now, central to the agreement was a shared commitment to building a broad-based, inclusive government and upholding constitutional rights, particularly the right to peaceful assembly. The Memorandum of Understanding granted amnesty to individuals charged during past protest and pledged compensation for victims of state excesses, signaling a significant shift in Kenya's approach to governance and justice. But in the slow pull of time, critical questions remain. Has the Memorandum of Understanding lived up to its promise? Are victims of protest-related violence receiving justice and compensation? Has the spirit of inclusivity translated into real political reforms and broader representation in government? And most importantly, is the implementation of the MOU on track, or has political goodwill stalled under competing interests? These are some of the probing questions that we want to drill deeper and ask our panelists to just engage with this evening. And we have them here with us. I want just to introduce them right now. I know some of them, they've had a long day in the National Assembly and the Senate as well. Just looking also at Senator Okongo Mugini coming from Nyamira. He's been in the Senate and now you are in the show. Wow, it's a long day as well. Dr. Nyikal, good to see you. You were out of the country last week, you're back. Good to see you as well. And for the long time also, we haven't seen Honorable Peter Kaluma. Thank you for joining us as well. You've been presiding also over the National Assembly's engagement today. We want to thank you so much. And the man with the fedora, Tony Gashoka, thank you for joining us. It's been a while since I saw you in person. They always say that we always see the soft copy. Now today we are seeing the hard copy. Jambo, thank you for joining us. Tony Gashoka is the Nairobi gubernatorial aspirant. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. Let's just get down to stacks and first of all, just hear from you as well. We can begin with you, Senator Okongo Mugini, coming from, of course, Nyamira. Earlier on, I saw some clips of you attending a funeral. Briefly, you can tell us, I think this was the accident that happened to some of, there was a tragic road accident in Nyamira. You can tell us more about that briefly. Yeah, yes. Good evening.
Yeah, I was on the border of North Mogirango, Borabu, attending the funeral of Joseph Momanyi, one of the accident victims, the accident that took place at Kijauri. Mm-hmm. That is a market between Sotik and Keroka. We lost 8 lives, so today we are burying the young man left behind, a widow, and 2 young boys. So I went to say pole to the family and to empathize with them and pass my message of condolences. Yeah, that has been a black spot for a while. You remember we had CS Roads in SIGNET, I think last week, and I was making an appeal to him to try and build a climbing lane. Because it's a fairly steep downhill road from both sides. And you know, just last year again, we had a similar occurrence. We lost 3 people, and this has been recurring. So I was saying, you know, a government should care for its people. If you leave our roads to consume all your citizens, who gonna vote for you, or who are you leading? And he promised that the government will try and intervene and do an extra lane that will act as a climbing lane. But I ran into very rough crowds when I was telling them that the CS promised that the government will do something. They said that president who always tells people lies. You know, I mean, that's where we have reached. I think the president should try and be in touch with the people to understand how people perceive him, how people regard him, how people take anything you seem to convey that it's a message from the government. But it was a very sad occasion, and it's a young life that we really ought not to have lost were it not for that accident. In fact, there is even a more sorrowful one on Friday at Tinderet in Borabu, where a mother who is very elderly, 87, lost only 2 sons who have been taking care of him. They both perished in that accident. They had just parked on the roadside. Their spouses were buying some things from the market, and they were crushed. They died on the spot, and they've just gone. So we are also burying them on Friday. And in all this, I've not seen any assistance or even a message of condolences from the government of the day. This has been left to us and the community to deal with. You lose 8 lives, but the government is unmoved. Unmoved, totally unmoved. I mean, you really wonder, does our government have feelings for its people? Okay,
we want to, and our deepest sympathy and sincere condolences for the lives that were lost in that tragic road accident. But let's just also buckle down to the topic of the day. Dr. Nyikal, good to see you. Thank you. I want just to begin with you briefly so that we can, before we drill deeper to the not BBI, but the broad-based government, you can update us with the reasons. I know you as a Committee of Health, you are looking at the Shakahola, not really the Shakahola, but we had the issue of the organ harvesting. We've seen that there is an independent, of course, organization that came up with a report. I don't know if you can bring us up to speed with your report that you've been working on.
Well, there are 2 processes going on that. One from Parliament, which still is going on. So I can't say much about it. And then one that was being done in the ministry. The report has come, but it has not reached us. So from what we are doing in Parliament, we are able to interview the Member of Parliament who actually raised the matter. And from him, definitely there are a lot of things going on. People are being convinced that they could donate their kidneys and they could still be all right without much information. Several facilities, not just the Medihill, were involved in the process according to the information that he gave us. Some were doing tests that need to precede that. Then, according to him, the surgeries were being done in the Medihill hospitals. There appears that some people who were not Kenyans. Some IDs that were being shown didn't seem to be authentic. So we haven't gone into all that in more detail than that. So definitely there is something. The report from the ministry I have not seen. It hasn't come to the committee. So what I know is exactly what you know, what you saw regarding the report.
But why is it why the glacial slowness in coming up with this report? I think since the last time we were speaking with you here, you were on it until now. Well, this is towards now, August we're headed.
Well, Parliament has very many things to do. So, and Parliament as a committee, if you're doing it, you actually do it as the committee yourself. So the minister can take a team and say that team is going to do it. But with Parliament, the committee itself, and in the process, we know we had the budget process going on. But I don't think to me, what is most important, shall we get to the truth? And I'm happy that the minister will come with something that will also become what we will look at and compare what the minister has come with and what we shall get ourselves.
Thank you. Thank you. Tony Gashoka, good to see you as well. Let me just get your view, first of all, regarding what I've just read with the broad-based government. We can see the implosion within ODM as far as also the running of the party is concerned, and their association with the Kenya Kwanza administration, which they say, according to the Secretary General, is becoming very unpopular. I don't know what you've been reading from your tea leaves.
Could I begin by saying that
Yes.
the three men on my right owe me a debt of gratitude? Because, you know, this ODM, the Orange Democratic Party, I have a very deep history with it. Because when originally BAMBA, Jacom, was in the ODM Kenya, which was taken then by the late Mutula Kilonzo, Dan Manzo, and that group, BAMBA did not have a party. At that time, the Kikuyus in power wanted to divide the orange. So Kiraito Murungi, Paul Muite, and the rest looked for me, and they gave me ODM. So they can ask BAMBA tomorrow. I'm the one who gave ODM to BAMBA. But anyway, without discussing ODM...
So is it disheartening to see what is happening to ODM?
I wanted to actually tell you about today, this date, why it's important to me. Today, 80 years ago, was the death of Adolf Hitler. Mm-hmm. Adolf Hitler was arguably one of the most evil human beings to ever live. He actually decided that he'll wipe out the Jews, he will massacre people, take over territory, and be able to become an imperial head of Europe. And after the example of Adolf Hitler, here in Africa, we've had several examples. Idi Amin Dada, Mobutu Sese Seko, Kamuzu Banda, Said Barre, etc. My tragedy about the broad-based government is not about the ODM politics or the politics of UDA. It is about the fact that there is a tyrant in the country who is abducting Kenyans, who is shooting and causing to be shot innocent lives by giving the permission, a license maybe to the police to use excessive force. We are beginning to develop not a constitutional democracy, but a police state. And my worry is that since Hitler, the argument about human beings and mankind has been about what is good and bad. In fact, the formation of the United Nations was made to ensure that there is no more conflicts in the world, that where possible, peace and non-violence becomes a cry call for mankind. We are now in a country where the party which I helped give to BAMBA, the Orange Democratic Party, is in bed and in cahoots with the president who cannot account for how 60 young people die, how cannot account for how people are abducted. So what I would like personally is to depoliticize the broad-based government, but to come back to the Bill of Rights, come back to the right of every Kenyan, young or old, to live a dignified life under the law, and to be able to ventilate in any other way. You cannot have a president speaking unpresidentially. You can't have a president saying, shoot them at the legs. You can't have a minister of Interior saying to the police, shoot to kill. Mm-hmm. I raise these issues because whatever you look into the broad-based government, you come back to the foundation of the Kenyan Republic. Mm-hmm. As defined by the Constitution, Kenya is a multi-party democracy. But from 1964, when the Queen authority ended in Kenya, Kenya became a republic. And in becoming a republic, you talked about a government that delegated authority from the people for it to govern them, but not to kill them. So what I would want to say at the studios here today, to those that will listen, can we bring an end to killing our children? Can we bring an end to abductions? Can we find a way in which the country is governed by laws and not by the pistol or the gun? The reason I'm saying this is because whatever good the broad-based government may wish to do, whatever it is that they got together to do, will be taken away by the eroding of the fundamental human rights of every Kenyan. And I really pray that those tears of the mothers we see every day can come to an end. And if that is what the broad-based government can achieve, then I would say at least that was worth my giving ODM to BAMBA. Yes.
Right. Peter Kaluma thinks that the broad-based government is, the one of the finest things that Kenya has ever seen since the sliced bread, right? Is that so?
Debal, let me first thank you for bringing this team. I watched this program last week, and I thought it was very far below the level of the TV station and your anchorage. Let me also thank you for bringing this top leadership And I wanted to request all of us here that there is a reason as to why we have been picked by this media to come and speak to Kenyans. There are 55 million Kenyans who would have been here. So when we are here, let us be frank. Let us, from the point of leadership, speak to the nation the truth and things that can guide the nation well. The broad-based government was not entered into in easy circumstances. I was just reading for my brother here the provisions of Article 146, Sub-Article 2 of the Constitution. You remember when we had the Gen Z uprising, which was a national, movement, Dibal, it started as Reject Finance Bill 2024. And the clarion call throughout, even up to the last day, Tony, was reject. Yeah. Our side, Nikal will tell you, Okongo will tell you, we rejected, as the Gen Z wanted. After the finance bill died, the thing moved from the finance bill that it was to Ruto must go. It went to Ruto must go. And then I think the people of Ruto said, but why Ruto alone? And so Ruto must go moved to Kufa driver, Kufa Makanga, meaning both Ruto and Gachagua have to go. And I think we were on point up to that level. Look at Article 146, Sub-Article 2, in terms of what happens when we have a vacancy in the offices of the president and the deputy president. When you have a vacancy in the office of the president and the deputy president is there, the deputy president takes over. When both the president and the deputy were not to be there, remember at that time we were talking about Kufa driver, Kufa Makanga. Then the Constitution says at the provision I've told you, that the Speaker of the National Assembly takes over for 60 days. Within those 60 days, there must be an election. Did we have an IEBC? It was just constituted the other day. And so at the 60th day, this country was not going to have leadership. People have said the military were to take over. But they are thinking of the military as the only agency with the force to take over then. But assume it would be the military or then an unconstitutional rule then comes into the country. Look at the countries which have gone in that direction. My brother Dibal, Somalia taped in 1991. It has not reset and gotten back to the rail 35 years later. Look at countries which have gone from constitutional rule to a rule other than by the Constitution. It will confirm to you across the world and across Africa that they take virtually our whole generation is wiped before we would come back and have this beautiful document. And about that is the context in which we sat as a political party and later you remember as a coalition. And it was not an easy decision, but I believe it was a difficult yet the most patriotic decision. Let me tell Kenyans, if we allowed military rule, see the situation where they have even taken over and allowed something called democracy to come back. They just change uniforms, they control the elections, and they have term limits. The other day we were celebrating West Africa Dibal. What is the president of Niger now saying? There is no term limit. He will rule for as long as he wants. Let me tell our people that when there is a rule other than by the Constitution, today any retiree would not be claiming money anywhere. All our schools, I guess, would still be shut. There would be no MP, there would be no police officer, everybody would be a civilian. I imagine most of us would be going out of the country seeking refuge and other situations. And that is why we sat as a party and we made the difficult decision to say that we may talk of human rights and fundamental freedoms, but without Kenya, you cannot enjoy those rights. And so that is what birthed the broad-based government after the Gen Z uprising. And I wanted to request the young people, I've seen so many of them shouting, ODM betrayed us, BAMBA betrayed us. I'm telling you, in this lifetime, I hope we'll be awake and we will thank Raila and the ODM party for intervening to secure that the state is there instead of going away. Let me come straight to the MOU. If you read that MOU, and it was read by the respective Secretary Generals, Sifuna on behalf of the ODM party, and remember it was Hassan Omar because I was there at KICC. It's a public thing. Read the preamble. It says Kenya has socio, economic, and political problems which are destabilizing the state each time. And then it goes point by point to identify the issues arising from those tensions and how they can be addressed. I wanted to confirm that at the first point, you see NADCO. Up to yesterday, we were debating the Elections Act amendment law, the Registrar of Political Parties amendment, I think we debated, before we went on recess, and the things which we committed under that first part of the memorandum to deal with are being dealt with. I can tell you, we had the issue of inclusivity, devolution. We have the issue of compensation for people injured enjoying their Article 37 rights. We have all those issues. I can look at Kenyans in the face and tell them we are in the right trajectory. The challenge we are facing, Dibal, is on point number 2 of the MOU. That is calling for inclusivity.
In all spheres of life.
In all spheres of life. And remember, Dibal, we founded that thing as the second point on the principle that in a nation, you cannot have a nation when all people equally own and equally share in the resources. Dibal, if you follow me on X, yesterday I just posted the roads department. One community. From PS to down. And that is the case. You go to the AG's office, you go to the critical departments of government, so there is a resistance because, to bring inclusivity, some people have to go, some people have to come in, so that we live the life of Article 232 of the Constitution here, which says there will be ethnic and regional balance at all levels of government, which says that the minorities will be catered for, which says that, people who have been marginalized will be integrated, persons with disability will be integrated. For you to reach to a level where we have the face of Kenya as contemplated by Article 232, Dibal, some people have to go. Let me tell you, and Okongo will confirm and Nyikal, when we had the last election, 2022 election, we had a meeting, and you remember we were supported by the last president, the previous president, President Uhuru Kenyatta. So they came, and you remember the Masai Lodge meeting. What did President Uhuru Kenyatta tell us? I'm going to hand over to President Ruto, but prepare for elections in 6 months. This is so because President Uhuru knew the economy had been wrecked under his administration.
Right, thank you.
No. Allow me to conclude this.
Yes, just conclude briefly so that we can go to Okongo Mugini.
I want to tell you that 1 month before President Kenyatta, I'm just concluding on inclusivity, left office. He contracted 1,500 kilometers of roads in Mount Kenya alone. And so when you hear people saying, complete the ongoing projects before you can start any other, it is work only on our projects. And if you are dealing with 1,500 kilometers of roads, at the current appropriation, my colleague Nikalia will tell you, for 7 up to 10 years, you will be only completing those roads. You will not be doing roads anywhere. So inclusivity in terms of sharing national resources, inclusivity in terms reorganizing the public service is affecting us. Let me conclude by saying, Dibal, that let us not be unfair to President Ruto. If you want to say that where a police officer commits a mistake and shoots a person, it is Ruto we blame, then how many people died under Uhuru Kenyatta? I've served in the Security Committee for now 13 years continuously. Gachoka, do you know the number of people who are being carried in tapers and dumped into River Yala? How many people were being taken from Kilimani police station and shot in the head at Ngong Forest? When was Chris Musando executed? Where was baby Pendo, bludgeoned by the police in whose reign? If we are to talk about everybody who dies in your reign, it is you to blame. How many people died under Kibaki? So let us not, blame leadership as if we don't know the law. Let me conclude by saying...
No, you've been concluding for the longest time.
Yes.
Let me just try and butt in right now so that for the sake of time,
yes.
hang on to that particular thought so that I can go to Okongo Mugini. You've been listening to...
so let's be fair.
Kaluma. He says be fair. He says the country is actually headed in the right direction according to his own assessment. I don't know if you're holding any contrarian view regarding that. Do you hold with what he's saying? Are we in the right trajectory?
Kaluma is a colleague. We went to the same University of Nairobi, and is a lawyer I've held in very high regard and esteem. But I'm totally disappointed to sit next to him and hear what he's saying in defense of the current regime. Dibal, we were in university with Kaluma. We did demonstrations.
No, you were ahead of me.
We did I was ahead of him, but we were in university at the same time. We did demonstrations. I never saw President Moi's regime shoot and kill any student, and they can bear me witness. We were there with Kabando, Munya, Moses, Kuria, Mungatana, and the likes. We stormed the city many times, but the government of the day never shot and killed any university students at that time. So to listen to my colleague, a lawyer of repute and high standing, say that the country is on the right trajectory when we are killing young people, 60 of them in 2 months, is a tragedy for the nation. Depal. I joined this party ODM because I identified with the ideals of the party leader, Raila Amolo Odinga, a man we respect, a man who has fought and advocated for good governance for many years. And we hold him in very high respect. But I cannot come to this studio, and I want this to be on record. I want YouTube to record that I don't agree with the way the government is behaving in responding to demonstrations. Dibal, you cannot be in a country where a man who has carried the Bible and so on to defend the Constitution and the laws of this country gives an edict to the police telling them, if you find demonstrators, shoot them in the leg first. Take them to the hospital, then on their way, they can go to court of law. I don't think Honorable Kaluma here, who has a wife and children, would like to see his or her child being shot merely because that child stepped out to register a disagreement with the government of the day by picketing, which is allowed by this constitution. So I'm sorry, Dibal, that I've seen families shed tears. Last week on Friday, we buried a young man from Ekiribugietai Institute who was, the students came out protesting on the poor state of the road between Tombe and Ekiribugietai Institute. And because CS Interior, Murkomen, had given an undertaking that the government will no longer cooperate with investigative agencies, they just shot that young man dead. And the parents who had a lot of hope on that child mourned and have buried that son. And there is no any accountability. As we speak, I spoke today in the Senate. When I left Nyamira today, I went straight to the Senate to speak on a statement that was being raised in the Senate on these extrajudicial killings. So I mean, we cannot join a government and aid that government to throw the rule of law out of the window, Dibal. Even countries that have no repute in terms of being democratic, like Bangladesh. I mean, if I asked you about Bangladesh, you will not stand up and say that's one of the most democratic nations. But back in that country, if you remember last year, we had a number of uprisings led by university students. And the government in Bangladesh slaughtered 1,500 students. Okay? But the law has just caught up with the Prime Minister. As we speak now, there is a special tribunal that has been set up in Bangladesh, trying the Prime Minister in office then, the Minister for Home Affairs, the equivalent of our Murkomen, and the Inspector General of Police, because they consider the crimes that were committed to be genocide. You killing your own people simply because they have come out to protest. Dibal, it's not right. And even if you go to very, very advanced democracies, when people come out to protest, it means that they are passing a message to your regime. They are saying they are not satisfied with the way you are leading a country. In US, when John F. Kennedy died, he handed over to Lyndon Johnson. And Lyndon Johnson made some tactical error and continued the war in Vietnam. He did one term. In the run-up to the second term, Americans were so dissatisfied with that decision that they stepped out in the streets and demonstrated against his regime. When he saw the mood, he actually opted and said, I will not offer my candidature through the Democratic Party to run for second term. So if you are not able to lead a country and win the confidence of the people, Dibal, you can even quit.
He had read the mood.
He had read the mood in the country, and he opted not to go for a second term. So generally, I'm really saying, my closing remarks is, we as a party, I'm speaking from the bottom of my heart.
No,
Dibal, as a former president of Law Society, as a man who respects the rule of law, Dibal, we should not, under whatever circumstances, support a regime that does not respect good governance, that does not respect the rule of law, that wants to respond to people's protests extrajudiciously. That is something that...
You will tell us if also you are still in the party, because I can see there's some sentiments coming from within the party when we're talking about inter-party democracy. Just a moment, that the someone is saying that the Ruto administration is deeply unpopular.
Dibal, I can answer you on the party. You don't need to pause it.
Associating with it could destroy the careers of many within the party. And I wonder if you're one of them, because also we've seen you
Dibal, I'm a lawyer. I'm a lawyer, Dibal. I was not elected on UDA. I was not elected under President William Ruto's party. I'm not an apologist of the UDA administration. In fact, the person who should be saying he's not in the party is the apologist of Ruto to my left. He's speaking like he's more of UDA than ODM.
What are you doing with Matiang'i?
Yeah.
And in which party are you with Matiang'i?
You should
because that is the politics you are covering up here.
You should start by telling us why he has gone to bed with President William Ruto, and that is UDA. If you read the Constitution of Kenya, Dibal, there is the thing we are calling, I don't know what it's, a working framework, is unconstitutional and extra legal. There is nothing.
Okay, just about you. We'll come to you so that we can go sequentially. Everyone gets a good share of time to contribute as well and share, express their opinion.
Dibal, yes. I'm a member of ODM.
Is it all well with ODM right now?
I am a member of ODM.
Yes, I know you're a member, but I'm asking, is it all well with ODM?
All is well with ODM. And what you have to realize, the circumstances we were in, the circumstances we are in now. How did we agree to support this government at the time that we had a crisis? Normally the party...
I hope you're not rehashing what Kaluma has said.
No, I'm not.
Yes, don't interrupt.
Okay.
Don't interrupt me.
But I don't want a regurgitation of where we were. We know where we were before. Yeah. Yes,
but
so you know,
Dibal, if you listen, if you let a point of view develop, you will see a difference. And you must accept that difference. in any organization, people are not the same. People will hold views. Some views will be very extreme. Some views will be moderate. Some will be in the middle. They still belong to that part. That is what forms any group. Even if as a party or as an organization, you agree on a certain line of action, as an individual, you must find reason within yourself that makes you support. And you may find that you also don't agree with some of things that are happening. And you may say, well, I'm tolerating this, but I don't agree with it. I'll just say why I agreed with the decision that was made when we were in crisis. And that reason cannot be different, even if Kaluma said it. Me, I asked myself, on that day, I was in Parliament. Where was the country going? If the movement and that demonstration and the number of people that were dying, the children were dying on the road, where was he taking us? If the president was that time say, okay, I quit or I ran away, who was going to be the president? By evening, actually, whether right or wrong, I thought it was wrong at that time. The army had been called by the Minister for Defense at that time onto the streets. So when the decision was made, let's get some kind of agreement, some kind of support to end this, that I agreed with. Now, you are asking whether the terms of the MOU have been actually abided by. I can say I'm not satisfied that they have gone on as I, Nikal, would have accepted. Inclusivity is talked about, but I'm very concerned about the constitutional rights of people. When people are dying, that I actually don't agree with. Whenever there are demonstrations, wherever there is this kind of civil dispute, people die, but it should not be seen like some are deliberate. And therefore, I'm saying, okay, we are in this. In general, I believe, as Nikal, that things would have been much worse than it is now. But that is not to say what is happening now is right. So the party now is in a situation where we have a lot of varied views because what we have come through and what we are. And this will be contained. The party has its organs and structures, and we look at this thing and say, and review, where are we going? Do we agree with this? So things like, to me, what I don't like most are people who are dying. Because even when we had demonstration, I remember when we were in ODM, and I think the day Jacom came from the US, on that day alone, 28 young people died, and they were all actually shot. That was wrong, and this is wrong also. So in my view, even if, in my view, we held and the state held, but it does not mean that everything else is right. So what we then can ask ourselves, or at least me, I'll ask myself, maybe it is time to review and look at it. Are we going in the right direction? I can't say if somebody chases a young man, corners him, and shoots him, even if I'm supporting that system, that action itself is wrong. And unfortunately, the most senior person in any organization takes the responsibility, even if they did not give the order. So in that context, within ODM, we supported, but there are issues that we actually don't agree with it totally. So, and that in my mind, you wouldn't call it that there is implosion. In a very difficult situation like where we were, people will have different views, but will say, hold on, and let's see what comes out of this. If you asked me what is the way forward, I say, as ODM, let's sit down and say, what do we say now on these issues where people are dying, on these issues of not very historical, recent historical unfairness in development. What do we do now? So at that point, we will say, this is the position. But me, there are certain things I don't agree with. The death of young people, no. Particularly the abductions. Because if it is during the demonstration, in that heat of the moment, people are killed. But I've not seen where people are actually cornered and shot. I haven't seen that before.
You have not seen that
before.
Okay.
And if now they are actually being, that I don't agree with. But it has not reached a point. It has reached a point we look at it as a party. People will have different views. Kaluma will hold that view. I will hold that view. But we must remain intact as a party.
Which flies in the face of what actually you just said before, that, things could have been worse. And you're saying, you've never seen that before. So I think things have gotten all the worse with even this particular memorandum of understanding, particularly if we see on Article 6 of the memorandum of understanding, and this is where I want you to chime in as well.
Can I tell you, let me just tell you why I say things could have been worse. There's a country I observed which moved almost in exactly the same way. In Sudan, actually it was the professionals, the civilians who actually started and said, we must change things. The army came and joined them and now said they're also against the regime of Bashir. And they said, okay, let's make an agreement, let's then run together. What has eventually happened?
Thank you.
The army just threw them out. And what is Sudan in like now? So why I'm saying probably it could be worse, but what we have now is you can't say these deaths are good.
So compared to the demonstration that we had with ODM in 2024 or even 2023. 2023, and right now things have gotten all the worse, so to speak.
Let me first of all want to clarify to Mheshimiwa Kaluma here that Uhuru Kenyatta, I had the name Uhuru Kenyatta mentioned. Tony Gashoka has never voted for Uhuru Kenyatta. Since 1997, I voted for ODM. I voted for Honorable, my brother, Raila Amolo Odinga. After the foundation of ODM, the late Charles Jonjo and Tony Gashoka were the only people who stood with BAMBA. I find it very sad that every time there is a discussion that has to do with the national ethos about the Bill of Rights, people want to talk about ethnicity. As far as I'm concerned, I will stand and die on my sword as a Kenyan who has always stood for this nation. I want to say without any fear of contradiction that, and I want to be very clear on this studio and this television, that my message is not to my right, it's to Baba. I'm telling Baba, who is my friend, this is not right. I'm telling Baba, who is my brother, that this must stop. Because he himself understands that we fought for this constitution. I never saw William Ruto at Bomas of Kenya. I never saw him on no reform, no election, but Baba was there. The late Jaramogi Oginga was there. ODM is born of the blood of the movement of this nation. The Orange Democratic Movement came from the struggle towards a new constitutional order. Among and most critical in that constitutional order was the Bill of Rights. I remember Yashpa Guy walking in with James Orengo and Raila Odinga at Bomas of Kenya together with me and Apollo Jonjo, where we insisted that the Bill of Rights must be ingrained in the constitution of the country. The Bill of Rights is an integral part of Kenya's democratic state and is a framework for socio-economic and cultural policies. I want to also say this, and I want to say this to the young people. The young people and those people who stood out in order to protest against this government did not do so because they had nothing else to do. What happened was it started incrementally. Why? Because after elections and a disputed electoral process, the government of Kenya Kwanza was sworn in as a minority government, simply because they didn't have the numbers in parliament. In order to defeat Azimio la Umoja, who had won the majority of MPs and senators, they started buying people from the opposition in order that they could tilt the scales against the will of the people exercised in a democratic election. Since that time, William Ruto has gathered pieces of silver and an appetite to buy everybody in the opposition that he can in order to defeat the electoral processes that were elected to have, one, a government and an opposition. And the reason this constitution creates a multi-party democracy is because the opposition is meant to oppose the government of the day in order that people get a better government. My problem with the ODM decision of broad-based government is not about the policies or the economics. It's because there is no policeman, there is no watchdog in Parliament or in the Senate that can be able to hold to account the government for the people. And that is a constitutional nightmare, because once the people have done an election after 5 years, they have nothing else other than a recall of MPs or waiting for the next general election. So I want to say to the young people of this nation who are protesting against the broad-based government that you are right under the law, you are right under the Bill of Rights. But as William Shakespeare says, you know, a coward just dies once. So if death must be the price, it's not going to be the first time. Tom Mboya, yes. Degama Pinto, Awins Kode, there have been so many gallant sons of this nation, Robert Ouko, and many who have shed blood, in order that this country becomes accountable to the rule of law and better governance, the killing of corruption and so forth. So let there be a Rex Masai. So yes, let there be another person from another place. But let this not descend, that all of a sudden there is one part of Mount Kenya against the nation, because young people are rising up. Let us say, first of all, that any killing of any young person, any abduction of any young person is immoral, it is wrong, it is unlawful, it's unconstitutional. If we begin to agree that there are certain basic rights and wrongs, that there are certain things which we must uphold, the dignity of how we live with each other, that dignity is what is going to allow us to be able to aspire to take this country further. So I want to end by saying, you know, Frank Fanon said this about generations, that every generation must fulfill its promise. And I'm happy to hear senior lawyer Mugini and Karuma went to Nairobi University. I was in Europe and went so on. But we have had our time. Made mistakes or not, we had our time to fulfill our aspirations and live our dreams. We cannot be the people who sit on our children's future. We cannot be the people that kill their hopes. Right or wrong, let them dream, but let them be at peace, and let them not fear their government, let them not fear their president, let them not fear that, you know, in fact, I remember when the ICC came, 4 people were charged, a sitting president, Uhuru Kenyatta, a police commissioner, Muhammad Ali, a head of civil service, Mudaura, and William Ruto were taken to the ICC by a letter written by the Orange Democratic Party, in part my brother Anyang' Nyong'o, raising the questions about the killings that happened in Naivasha and parts of the Rift Valley following the disputed 2007. So ODM has a history of raising in the international order the question of human rights. In fact, it was because of the letter of ODM that the ICC proceedings went ahead without objection from Mwai Kibaki. And in fact, a sitting president had to resign from office or retire from office for the period of the trial in order to be held to account. So I'm telling this president, I'm telling this commissioner of police, I'm telling this head of the civil service, kuna njia uko Hague, and you are not going to go that way. And I'm telling Karuma, whether he wishes it or he does not, there will be an end to the regime of William Ruto. But the question will not end because of me and you, but the law will never die. This constitution and the rights of those who died will never die. I pray that shooting our children is no solution to the ODM coalition with William Ruto.
So what do you make of also the pronouncement by the president and some of the cabinet secretary regarding the current situation in the country, especially also from Murkomen? We don't need to just restate what they've said. Are they using Nixonian rhetoric, you know, to try and scapegoat, you know, go to different regimes, just like Kaluma is telling us? No. You know, you don't want actually to own the moment, and you speak to the periphery.
It's Machiavellian. It's better to be feared than loved. There is a principle in politics where you can try to scare and intimidate. It better be feared than loved. But over time and throughout history, what has happened is that those who have ruled by the gun have died by the gun. Those who live by the sword die by the sword. And at the end, when Hitler came to his end, actually it was 1940 when he marched into Berlin as a king. And 4 years later, he was dying in a bunker on a suicide pill. Mm-hmm. Most of these guys who shoot and kill without policemen are cowards.
Mm-hmm. Right, so we've seen, yes, I'm just trying to point out that particular rhetoric that is coming. It is not, it is now the parents who are not really, you know, parenting in the right way. Previously, also, it was the Ford Foundation that actually is trying to foment all this turmoil that we're having in the country. Again, now it is the opposition who are actually paying, and maybe they're bankrolling this particular protest. So the ownership is not really within government.
Let me respond to that question you are raising. Tony has spoken very well. But Tony is forgetting that under the current constitution, there is nothing called opposition. The work of the opposition, which is oversight, is the work of Parliament as a whole, as an institution, under both Article 95 for National Assembly and Article 96. So Tony, don't imagine that there is some party called ODM to do opposition work. It is not here. In fact, the leader of majority in either House of Parliament should be leading the charge against the executive in terms of oversight. So that should be debunked. Number two, let me say, Dibal, that the death of anybody is painful.
But I'm interested just
we cannot be.
I'm interested, just allow me to butt in. If you mentioned
Dibal, you always butt in.
No, let me just butt in.
When you come and I have to speak.
No. I wanted you to clarify. Yes, if we don't really have an opposition, and I know Raila Odinga.
I've told you it is the work of Parliament as an institution. Mm-hmm. And learn to make the entire Parliament work, and Parliament is working very well.
So what is the purpose of the minority really functioning?
The minority and majority are in one Parliament doing oversight together. It is the system you see in the United States, for instance. There is nothing like minority opposition or what. You remember the time of President Biden, in terms of the House of Congress, they were the minority, but they were the government. Yeah, so these are the confusions we need to keep explaining to people. The imaginary thing that there is some opposition to do oversight is not there. It is Parliament as an institution. We don't have official opposition and government side. Indeed, if you look at Article 4, Sub-Article 2 of this Constitution, everybody is in government with institutions performing the functions the Kenya stated here. But that is, by the way, Dibala. In this Constitution, the richest part of it is Chapter 4, dealing with the Bill of Rights. If you go to Article 245, which my friends will not tell you, it structures how the agencies of government ought to work. And that Article 245 will tell you the police is under the independent command of the Inspector General. You know, I want to talk this way, Dibal, because we should also not hide our children the way some of us are encouraging them to go to streets while their children are elsewhere being prepared to go to the streets unnecessarily. Dibal, the death of any Kenyan was still the death of a Kenyan child is very unfortunate. And it is something no sane Kenyan can sit on a desk anywhere, including here, to joke around with. What I request of all of us as leaders of Congo, Tony, is that we don't be selective when some Kenyans die. I hear us now talking about within a month this number of children died. Nikal, what were we doing in the month of July and August of 2023? On 21st July alone, on the orders which Gachagua confirmed were coming from him, that is an operation that was left with charge and is on record and on television. People were being pulled from houses in Nyamasari and Nyalenda. One by one, every male person was being shot on the head, the heart, and the genitals. What were we doing as a Azimio team with Akina Kalonzo for the whole of August? Burying people. And we have a case before the High Court, Dibal, for 75 people killed in that period alone. Do I tell you the difference? For those people, the case has not been able to move. Why? Because you don't know the police who shot them. You saw the police officers who were shooting Raila in the car on something confirmed by Gachagua himself, that is the one who was in charge of. Who are they? The difference from that time and now is that there is more accountability. So you shoot Were Ongondo today, and within a week we know who shot him. You shoot Boniface Mwangi Karaoke today, and the people go to court. You shoot Albert Ojwang, and in no minute, people are going to court. Other investigations continue. This is unlike before. And this is only happening because we are in an arrangement where we insisted that for every human right abuse, there must be accountability in the MOU. Let me tell you, we either choose to build a country that can stand on a strong foundation, or we be selective, we take our political sides and we pretend which side is good for us when we say what. The situation in which this country is, and you see it in the MOU, we said the young people, the BAL need jobs. It is captured there. I don't know whether you see it. Mm-hmm. I was in the spring meeting of the World Bank and IMF, and it's projected, you can Google the BAL, that by 2035, we will be having a youth bulge of jobless young people, well-skilled, of 1.2 billion. How do you create jobs? Government does not employ. Currently, barely 1 million people are civil servants within government. Mm-hmm. Government creates an environment in which investors can invest and create jobs. Let me ask my colleagues, who will invest in Nairobi, where people wake up any day and they say they are going to demonstrate? And so that leads me to say, two things. It is unfortunate if Kenyans lost lives. But we must also be alive to the fact that these fundamental rights, including the right under Article 37, the right to assemble, the right to demonstrate, the right to picket, the right to petition relevant authorities for rights, is structured that way. And except the rights under Article 25, all those rights, including this, can be limited.
Thank you.
Let me say this as I end. You cannot sit and as leaders, knowing the law, my brother Okong, which we studied, and tell people there is no situation where the police will not shoot. Read Part B of the 6th schedule. There are circumstances where a police officer will shoot. You saw on the streets a lady police officer nearly being killed, and his colleagues are running away. Let me tell you, under that law, if those people were shot, it is not extrajudicial. So let us not have a situation where, like the last time you see a bishop praying for our young people to go to State House, God protect them, they go and come back alive. How are we guiding our young people? Let us tell our young people that the nation called Kenya needs to be stable. We are dealing with an economy, where this year KRA has raised 2.5 trillion, all going to paying interest on debts, largely which were taken by President Uhuru Kenyatta, and recurrent. And Ruto still has to develop the country.
All right.
Why don't we listen as a people and see the solutions? And when the party calls for dialogue, we make it simplistic.
But let me ask you, when you're talking about transparency, and I want just to focus on the police, because we've had also reports today that, the DIG is back in office.
Yes.
Apparently, he went on leave.
My position,
and we saw, just a moment. Yes. We saw very clearly a letter there, from the office, from the National Police Service itself, appended the signature there by, the IG himself, that he was stepping aside for investigation to be carried on. So when you're talking about transparency and accountability in this current regime, what would you say about this doublespeak, that he now is on leave?
It's not doublespeak, Dibal. My position, and let me end by saying so. If any police officer uses the firearm or ammunition paid for by the taxpayers for their protection in circumstances not permitted by the law, that police officer must be held culpable, must be arrested, must be prosecuted, must be jailed, and where a person died, in consequence of the action of such police officer, I would say not even life imprisonment would suffice. That police officer has to die, has to also be executed.
Thank you.
But I'm saying we cannot run this country the way Jesus was tried. If there is evidence that DIG Lagat did anything beyond, in my view, lodging the complaint he lodged. And I'm saying this because I'm in security committee. You know what I mean? So I have information all of us may not be having in the National Assembly. And you remember my attitude when the matter was being dealt with. I said, prosecute people. If DIG Lagat did anything beyond complaining, then let me tell you, I will be the last person to let him go. Just as I also say, if DIG Lagat did nothing beyond complaining, then it is unfair to say he cannot resume office if investigations don't link to him.
Thank you.
So mine is to question, is the investigation complete, or there is some evidence upon which we can therefore, proceed to arrest him and prosecute him? And remember, criminal cases never end. The evidence may not be there today, but I can tell you as and when the evidence is there, if he did anything about the death of Albert Ojwang, he will suffer for it.
All right, let's hear from Congo Mugini, and I just want us to also look at, I don't know if you want to respond to what he has said at any point, so
yeah.
that
First, this fear-mongering that our youths wanted to overthrow the government is totally unjustified. The young people, if you remember, what provoked them to come out in the streets, and we were on the same page. Kaluma knows, Ikal knows, we are all opposed to the finance bill. 2024. All of us.
So for this year.
So the youth actually came out to support the cause that we identified with. We are on the same page in 2024.
No, we did our...
Sorry, 2023. So I don't think we have any justification to bring these threats of what happened in Somalia and Sudan. The young people have been consistent that they want accountability from their leaders. That is the statement that they have consistently made. So we shouldn't paint our young children as people who want to do a coup. They don't want to do a coup. They want us, their leaders, to listen to them, create jobs, create an enabling environment for people to invest so that they can also start a living. Let me ask you, when a minister for, in this case our CS, stands up and addresses the world and says, we are charging people with terrorism, who is going to visit this country? Dibal, who? So the biggest threat to the country is the current regime of President William Ruto. Because when you send statements out there that the country has really broken down in terms of the law, that you have terrorists within your own country, you are telling the world that there is total breakdown of law and order in a country called Kenya. So let's get that very clear. Number two, we spent many days in Nadiko, pushing the things that my friend Kaluma is saying this evening. Nobody, neither I or anybody in this panel, wants to defend any regime for extrajudicial killings.
Yes.
The first statement in the Nadiko report, if you read it, was to make a recommendation that all the people who had been charged in any court because they participated in a demonstration or in a protestation ought to have been released. It's there in Nadiko. Number two, we recommended that there should be full compensation for any family that lost their loved ones due to the protestations or demonstrations. So don't say that this is just coming out because it's happening now. That has been a consistent statement, Dibal. Three, I disagree with my friend Kaluma when you tell us that the constitutional framework does not recognize the government side and the opposition side. If you read the proposed constitution amendment, and I'm sure Kaluma has read it, it proposed to enhance the provisions of Article 108 to create the position of leader of official opposition.
Yes.
In the same constitutional act that we have today.
It's a proposed amendment.
Yeah, I'm just telling you.
It is not there.
Yes.
What we want to strengthen, the existing regime talks of minority. And even if you go to America, it's the same thing. The party that oversights the government is the minority party. We used to call it the opposition, but we softened the language and said minority. All the oversight committees in the National Assembly, in the Senate, are chaired and have majority membership from the minority side, so that we can provide oversight, checks and balances on the government side, the one we call the majority side. So it's not true, Dibal. And then even in terms of chairing committees, the committees that run business, the majority side chairs the committees. The minority side provide the oversight, so to speak. So let's not cheat Kenyans that the constitution that the Kenyans enacted did away with the issue of oversighting government. Fourth, Dibal is telling us the president has no culpability when there are excesses from the police forces. That is nothing is further from the truth. If you read chapter 14 on national security, there is an important body there at Article 240 called the National Security Council. And Dibal, that National Security Council is chaired by the president. And what is the mandate of that council? The council has supervisory authority. Supervisory authority. You remember what the young man from Omabe was telling us? He says, shall. That's the word used. The young man was saying, when it is shall, it's mandatory. So the president chairs a body that has supervisory authority over all national security forces. So if there are any excesses, we hold the person who supervises the forces
accountable.
Accountable. So you cannot sit here.
It's not a force.
No. You cannot sit here, Kaluma, alumni of University of Nairobi, and tell Kenyans that the president can never be culpable.
It is the National Security Council, not the president.
No, he is the chair. He's the chair. He's the one who has supervision.
So the buck stops
we
today.
can split hairs, but that is what is in our constitution. So if the Kenyan police kills anybody, and wisdom comes with age. I'm happy that to my right is Dr. Nyikal, who has cited the Bill of Rights and said he wants history to record that on this day and night on TV 47, he stood on the side of history that was defending fundamental rights and freedoms. I salute you, my brother, Mzee Nyikal.
All right, let me come to Mzee Nyikal.
So,
are you done?
So in conclusion, let the president be very cautious. If there are any killings under his supervision, he can be held culpable. And I've given you a case of Bangladesh. What happened in Bangladesh? Those who are youths, they were killed under the supervision of the Prime Minister, Minister for Home Affairs, and the Inspector General of Police. Today, as we speak, they are being held culpable.
Thank you.
In courts of law.
Let me come to Dr. Nyikal, just to ask you, because even as you're talking about being held culpable, we've had the United Opposition of Kenya claiming that now they're building a case for, the ICC against President William Ruto with all these cases that is happening. I don't know how far they've gone with that. But I wanted just to ask you, in the spirit of Raila Odinga being the poster child of making sure that we got the multi-party democracy, the amendment of, Section 2 of the previous constitution that we had, that now we have multi-party democracy in our country enshrined, even with the current constitution. If we are going back to the memorandum of understandings, we are going back to coalitions, does it in any way also threaten the spirit of multi-party democracy in the country? Because now, if this is what we're going to be doing, that we have Jubilee and then we have the BBI, now the opposition again is marching with the Jubilee party. Now it is now the memorandum of understanding with the broad-based government. What are we doing to that particular quest that we had for a multi-party democracy in our country?
Dibal, all the things humans wake up in the morning to do is to improve their welfare. If we go into technicalities of the law and we forget Why do you want that law? Why do you want the Bill of Rights? Is to improve your welfare. What is really happening, and actually you have mentioned, we actually as a country, we have spent a lot of time seeking positions, but not seeking to improve the welfare of the people. We forget it. If you look at when we started with section 2A, when we came to multi-party, I remember that I was still practicing as a doctor, so I wasn't involved in this. People wanted this freedom. People want the freedom so that they can do their things. So we got the multi-party thing and so on. There was a big struggle to say if Bila yawezekana Bila Moi went. But did we then achieve what we wanted? That people live in harmony, there is justice, there is fairness, the inclusiveness. Do you know why? We use those things because we seek power. Once we have gotten power, before I got into politics, somebody once told me, a very senior politician, and I thought it was a joke. I'm beginning to think that for most politicians, it's not about the people, it's about power. I don't even know what they do with it. So, even when you talk to BBI, when you talk of NADCO, when you talk of Chapter 4, we have not achieved those things despite that. What was the BBI talking about? Youth unemployment, inclusivity, constitutional rights, compensation for those. The same thing. We came to
we have with the memorandum of understanding.
Yeah, exactly. It is the same thing that was also in NADCO. Again, it's the same thing that is actually in memorandum of understanding. What it is telling us, Dibal, is we haven't moved. We have changed these laws, we have got a progressive constitution, and also, but we haven't actually utilized them to actually achieve what we want. That is why when you start from multipartyism, then now you get rid of Moi, you get a new constitution, then now we come to BBI, then now you come to NADCO, then you come to Memorandum of Understanding. What do you get? We are still talking about the same things. So to me, I told you, I'm a member of ODM, and I do this because these are things that the ODM as a party and Raila as our leader, he has been actually talking about all these things up to the end. Now, so even if you look at when the Gen Zs came against the finance bill, I remember that day, I actually stood and told people on the other side who were supporting, I said, you know, even at this moment, if we can just say, let's drop this bill, that demonstration will end. I didn't know they were actually getting into parliament. Yeah. But we are telling them, let's drop this bill. So we didn't want the bill. But what you know, what happens, Dibal? When you bring chaos, when chaos comes, you start by not being fair, you start by being unjust, you start by using positions, you pretend that you actually inclusivity. When it is now done and checked that there is no inclusivity. Yesterday we were discussing a report of the cohesion, the Committee on Cohesion. Every institution, you take the head of that institution, and ethnically you can tell who is employed there. Across the board. So, and look at it, even when you are actually running our services. Now, in this country, there are people who are very wealthy, but you don't see what they do. When Bill Gates is rich, you can see there are computers everywhere. You know where Bill Gates' wealth came from. There are few people. Now, if these wealthy people were actually working and generating wealth, even the youth would be employed. But people are wealthy. What they have done to get this wealth, you don't know. So these are the problems. So now, when the youth come and say they want change, but the thing is, when they want change, when they bring this, there are people who actually want to utilize that uprising to get to their own. These are people who will actually burn the country in the name of the youth. That is why you say, hey, let's stop it. If it is getting there, are we really going to get what we want? I told Sudan, my friend was saying, even Sudan, did they get what they want? Because we must look at a process that when we bring change, when we reached a time when Moi was removed, there was a very organized structure of who was going to take over. When Raila said, now, Kibaki Tosha, it was clear that if we remove it. So, but let me tell you, well, when people die, he was asking me what we are doing in 2023. Okay, we are demonstrating and people are dying. I hated it then as I hate it now. So we must not put a situation, and you know, the truth is I've been in demonstrations. My car right now has actually a mark that was left by
the stone of Koome.
It was actually a canister. That mark it was thrown by Koome. Yeah, the Nairobi police
became the IG later.
Yeah, so I can actually say I know who threw the stone, the canister on my car. The mark is there. I'll not remove it. So, all right. So, thank you. So, no, what I'm saying, those past deaths are bad. Those current deaths are bad. If the DIG is in office today, that is wrong. Why is it wrong? I don't know. You've just told me. He said he stepped aside for investigations to go on. I'm not a lawyer. But what I know, if that is what you say, then the first thing that happens for him to come back is when the investigation is over and the results of the investigation has been made public and the public say, actually, other than this, you know. So again, that is wrong. So it cannot be that, I'm saying we are still supporting the government. But when things are wrong, I'll actually say, Mr. President,
thank you.
See how these deaths are to be stopped.
All right, thank you.
Children can't buy.
Okay, well, I just wanted to ask
you know,
Tony Gashoka, I think you watched also the interview, the Secretary General of ODM yesterday, and he regarded this memorandum of understanding that we're discussing as dead. Because all the things here that they had agreed with the Kenya Kwanza government, nothing has come to fruition. If we look at the full implementation of the NADCO report, that one also is still in the process. We don't know where it is at. They can always tell us inclusivity in all spheres of public life, that is still wanting. Protecting and strengthening devolution, right? We have all had cases about also the disbursement of fund that has not been coming promptly. Promoting and protecting the livelihoods of young people. Now, this is where we have the bone of contention, because this has not been observed. Leadership and integrity, rights to peaceful assembly and protest, and compensation of all pending claims. This is one of the key items that I think there has been an egregious violations.
Let me say, because I don't think I'll speak again, that it's been a privilege to share the platform with this distinguished panel. But when I was doing my dissertation in the UK, one of the papers I was writing was, if there had been no Hitler, who would have been Churchill? and Churchill said, you know, that of all the virtues of a man, there's none more important than courage. And the last meeting I had with my friend and mentor, political mentor, Jacom, Raila Odinga, was at Riverside Drive. The day he did the first Maandamano, he convened a group of us. Present was Professor Makau Mutua, myself, James Orengo, Wakili Amolo Otiende, Ruth Odinga was there. I think the Maasai Senator Oladama was there. I'm just trying to remember off the top of my head, but it was a distinguished panel. And I remember at that point we were discussing why would Baba take a risk with his life and come out to stand against William Ruto's government. And after everybody spoke, Baba stood on his feet. And as God lives in heaven, Baba said that he was not going to oppose Ruto. He was going to let Ruto try and fulfill his mandate and see whether he would lead Kenya forward. But when he saw the cannibalization of the opposition, when he saw the buying of members of parliament and senators and the destruction of the constitutional order, he decided that this is a road that Yoweri Museveni, Kaguta Museveni, followed in Uganda. And now he's running, I don't know, for 16 years. And he said, this is the route that Rwanda is going. And as Raila Odinga, I will not allow this, because Kenya is a democracy where there should be periodic elections, people should be elected, and the people's mandate must be exercised. But William Ruto began to exhibit from day one a strongman syndrome, where he and he alone must do everything. I want to remind the Prime Minister that the Constitution of Kenya 2010 was a product of this Mount Kenya, which is now being loathed. The alliance of Mount Kenya and ODM produced the 2010 Constitution.
It was all Kenya.
Because, I want to be clear, because President Mwai Kibaki and Raila Odinga were the political heads of the country. Yes, the whole country. But they are coming together beyond ethnic considerations created in the Constitution for the whole country. So when people need to be together, they are not tribalists. But when they disagree on ideology, on issues, they become tribalists. I want to tell Peter Kaluma, because we may not share another platform another time, if he wants to look for tribalists, let him not look for Tony Gashoka. Because that one, you will never win. Because even Raila will tell you off. I was working with Raila. In fact, I remember when Raila became Prime Minister, he appointed 3 people. Mohamed Isahakia, Karori Omondi, and Tony Gashoka. And therefore, please do not utter in your words using the name of ODM to call Tony Gashoka a tribalist. I will never stand or accept that. You can call other people that. I do not know them, I don't know their history, but I know mine. And I'm here to say at TV47, we are not going to contain, or we are not going to stomach the massacre of young people in this nation by any name, by any organization, by any police force, by any grand coalition government, whatever the case. There is a proper procedure under the Penal Code and the laws of Kenya for any criminal who conducts any criminal act to be tried by the jurors of their peers, to be put together and put in prison for as long as it takes for the crime they commit. But we cannot create fear in our children and actually sit down here and glorify the fact that a 12-year-old girl watching television at home can die from a stray bullet. And I mean, even in hell, I'm sure there must be a procedure. The devil himself, you know, there must be a procedure even in hell. I mean, this is absurd. And I want to say, you cannot. I mean, even Hitler had gas chambers. He would even give you a shower before he burnt you to ash. I mean, this guy, Subaru's wounded men and women, you know, abducting children and shooting. I mean, even in Vietnam, there were rules. A sniper would hide by the tree. I mean, you're watching television. I mean, I want to condemn in the strongest terms, and I want to tell Jacob, siasa dua paro. Jacob, siasa dua paro. Please don't allow this country one day to say Raila must go. Raila, you know, is out of love, but on this one, you're wrong.
Yeah. All right. Kaluma, so I want to just hear from you. Yeah. I know you've been at loggerheads also with the Secretary General of your party,
no,
Edwin Sifuna,
not so.
On a lot of things that he's, you know, pronouncing. He's actually said this memorandum of understanding is dead. Mm-hmm. This is where we had the broad-based government predicated on. So are we essentially saying that maybe there will be an exit because this is not holding?
Yes, the MOU was between political parties, the ODM and the UDA party. And both parties processed it through their relevant systems and organs. ODM at the middle letter is Democratic Party. There are things that my brother Sifuna will speak as Secretary General of the party when he's speaking for the party as the spokesperson. And usually there are things upon which there is a resolution, and you see them reading them after a meeting of the party of whatever level of organ. Sometimes NEC, sometimes Central Management Committee, sometimes elsewhere. But remember, Sifuna also is a person in his own right. Okay? And the Democratic Party that we are allows you to not lose yourself just because you are a Secretary General of the party. just as it also does not allow you to impose your own personal views on the party. So I will defend to the hilt the views of Sifuna, as I also defend the position of the party. And so to me, I don't think we...
So how do we as public decipher that this is Sifuna speaking and this is not the party?
Yes.
Because if he comes, we know this is the face of the party that is speaking.
That is what I've said. The Secretary General, when he speaks on behalf of the party, is reading a decision of the party. And you've seen very many circumstances when he does so. Like 3 days before, you saw the party organ met and created, among others, a team to review this MOU and how it is being implemented. So those are his views.
Okay, so essentially when he's coming for a TV interview...
Because we are... when he's going for TV interview, Sifuna is in all right to say anything. And by the way, we are least bothered about what then he says, just as the party may not be bothered by what I say here. But Dibal, and so I'm telling you, I've not personally heard of any plan to exit Sifuna, and I will not be a party to it because we would be going against the D in the ODM. So let Sifuna speak as an individual. When we want him to speak as a party official, like when he was reading the MOU, okay? He also speaks as a party. If ODM and UDA were to go into a coalition, let me shock you, so long as Sifuna is the Secretary General, he'll also come and read it in spite of whatever he would have said in the media anywhere. But let me address very quickly a few issues which have arisen. There is need to compensate Kenyans who were injured, but most importantly, those who were killed. And the cases like the one for Irene Njoki is very painful, just as the others I was telling you about, okay? But, Dibal, and I ask all of us, is that something to achieve under Article 37 by demonstrating? Remember, Article 37 at the end provides for petitioning the right authorities. And that is why I started by telling you that arising from the demonstrations, the deaths of 2023, where young people were being pulled from houses and shot, we have a case under the name of Paul Mwangi before the High Court, and we are seeking it. Do we say that it is the president to compensate? Let me ask you, colleagues, what if President Ruto decided today that each life lost 1 million? Would it be sufficient? This is the reason as to why sometimes our party leader would say, can we sit down and talk? The court will give disparate or different sums of money, depending on our case is argued. Can we sit on a table, look at our situation faithfully, as prescribed in the preamble in the memorandum, and determine what would be fair compensation for those mothers? Now, when you go to the streets the way you saw them walking with former Chief Justice Maraga, so what after that? So there are cases where we need to petition. But why there are cases. There are cases.
No. Why would we sit to talk and we have the Victims Compensation Act? Why can't we implement it?
You need.
Why do we need?
The only way I can tell you, Dibal, where you can come to a fair compensation in terms of amount and identification even of people, other than court, is in a talk. You remember what happened in 2007, 2008? People went for compensation multiple times. At daytime, they are in the tent. In the evening, they are over. And if you remember 2008, people were compensated across, except people from my community. In fact, if you remember, by 2017, people were still being compensated, except in Nyanza. So we are saying,
Nyanza is Western.
Correct. Let us have a system in which we truly identify Kenyans who unjustly, died in the process of exercising their rights. And let us agree as Kenyans, beyond the courts, what would be fair compensation based on our, fiscal space and based on what we have gone through. So it's not demonstration. And that is why you saw me condemning former Chief Justice Maraga, for instance. You are a former Chief Justice. You know these people, their right belongs to the court for determination, or in a forum being asked for by Raila. You say there is no dialogue, but you're working with them. In the evening, you're going to eat your retirement benefits. They are back with nothing. Number two, there are ways and areas in which this MOU has been implemented very well. Look at devolution, Mugini. For the first time, even arrears for devolved units which had been pending for years and years have all been paid. Arrears for CDF, Decentralized Fund for National Government Functions, have all been paid at once. There are some developments which you can see is picked. That is not to say we can allow wrongs to be committed. And that is why we entered into the MOU. We entered saying we are a party founded on human rights, founded on ideals, and we will not allow anything other than that. Let me use this forum, Dibal, to remind our police officers of the provisions of Article 238. And what it says at sub-Article 2B is that national security shall be pursued in compliance with the law and with the utmost respect for the rule of law, democracy, human rights, and fundamental freedoms. And mark that. And that is why I said, if any police officer went doing something that is unconstitutional or unlawful, I would be last to defend you. But let us also agree, Dibal, that under Article 245, sub-Article 2, the independent command of the police, and that is the wording of the Constitution, is under the Inspector General, not any other agency. The President of the Republic is the Commander-in-Chief of the Defense Forces. The police now is a service under that command. And let us not therefore, let us also therefore tell the police that you do anything because anybody commanded you, you will be, there alone. But Tony, to end by saying, the discussion of tribes is constitutional. Read Article 232, 1GHI. It says all ethnic communities and regions must be integrated in public service and in the enjoyment of national resources. And so when I say one community is dominating against the others and vice versa, that community could be my community. I would not be right to defend that community. And that is why we are talking of inclusivity here. The thing engendering most division in this country, Dibal, is the feeling that some sections of this country are having this country in terms of public service and national resource sharing than the others. Look at northeastern Kenya. For the first time, we are having a road, Dibal, coming from Mandera through Wajir to Garissa. My own constituency, I've been a member of parliament for 13 years, since 2013, continuously. No single inch of road until this time we were holding Madaraka. So when we want to fight for national good, let us fight for national good. I hope, Dibal, that a time will come when we will forget about our political parties, when we will forget about the leader we want to lead this country at some point in time, when we will forget about where we come from, and as people privileged to lead, including you, Dibal, start by thinking, are we able to enjoy these fundamental rights which are very beautiful, absent Kenya? And agree with Raila that a time comes in the history of a country when you say, let us keep safe our state so that we can continue to enjoy rights. You may say Ruto must go, but what is the pathway other than the elections in 2027? Organize yourselves. If you believe you can remove him, let him also organize himself in the way he believes he can be re-elected. But don't come saying, children were dying, so that you overthrow a constitutionally, installed government for anarchy in the country. When we go that direction, we will not have it. So let us save our country, and let us all know that in an environment that is neat, Dibal, the country continues to thrive. In an environment of these riots we are calling demonstrations, even the few investors we have will go, and our young people who are increasing in population, who are very well trained, will have nowhere to work. In fact, there'll be refugees in other countries which will be laughing at us.
But the assumption that someone wants to really overthrow the government, where is it coming from? Is it just a paranoia from the upper reaches of government?
Let me tell you, Dibal, I don't know how much time you have. I told you I sit in the Security Committee. Dibal, the agency pricing started very well. And remember, I was in the media myself. My own daughter was photographed on Kenyatta Avenue. I told my children, you must join other children of Kenya. But let us not always bury our heads. Towards the end of that process, that good process by our children was infiltrated. But if you saw the people who entered parliament, the majority of them, that diving wave at any shot, what was it? It reached a time where our children remained as envelope for criminals whose intents were not good. And I want to say, Gen Z was about the finance bill. The finance bill ended in 2024. What are these demonstrations about? So there is the state and human rights, and these guys to destabilize the state, which nobody, I think, including all Kenyans, should permit.
I wanted just to ask you, even as you bring this conversation to a close, Congo Mugini, because one of the items also in the memorandum of understanding is stamping or lancing the boil of corruption in this country. Because they say fight against corruption, Kenya needs to move from talk to action. Very interesting also report that we had today from the Auditor General, that the monies that has been remitted to the e-citizen platform, billions in public funds collected by the e-citizen platform, may not be reaching Treasury. And we have the PS of Treasury who has been, I think, Parliament has written a writ, has a writ to call him to ask and ascertain this particular revelation that we're getting. So what does this really say about transparency that you've been talking about, accountability, and especially systemic failure in Kenya's digital revenue collection system, right? We know the story of e-citizen. The president has been categorical that all transactions, in government has to be transmitted through the 2222. Okongo Mugini. Just briefly.
Can I say something before I answer you?
Sure.
Yeah, just one clarification. When I made that statement that the president is the chair of National Security Council, Kaluma was making an assertion that the police is not one of those organs. But I want to tell him that if you read Article 239, they are part of security organs.
I'm saying the police is an independent command of inspector, not president.
No, I was talking about supervisory authority.
Supervisory is ANSAC, not the president.
Yeah, supervisory. So, and I'm happy. You started like Saul, you almost becoming Paul, but you are still somewhere in there on this issue of extrajudicial killings. But I'm happy with my friend Kashoka. If I was still president of Law Society, you deserve an honorary degree. You have really advocated for fundamental rights and freedoms. And that's what we should do when we're on these platforms. Dibal, there is nothing wrong with an agitation to have Ruto serve one term. It's within the Constitution. When he was sworn in, he was sworn into office to serve one term. And if you don't perform, Kenyans have a right to say you will be a one-term president. And we have seen there are so many countries in Africa where presidents have done one term, including Nigeria, which used to be under military rule. Goodluck Johnson transited from deputy president, became president, and he was voted out of office. The other day in Zambia, Edgar Lungu, who was having the same traits like President William Ruto, he really tormented Chilemi Akainde. But he served one term, he was voted out. God bless his soul, he died the other day. In Ghana, you know what happened to Mahama? Mahama, the people rebelled. There was a rebellion against his leadership. He took over 2 months to the full election. When the president in office died, he was voted out after one term. Mahama, was he not voted out?
To stay
so there is nothing wrong. You can't tell Kenyans that agitating for Ruto to serve one term is unconstitutional. You know George Weah? Mm-hmm. What happened in
Liberia?
In Liberia. He did one term because the Liberians said every time we hear about George Weah is on a flight to the US. And he was voted out and he gave him the power. To the people like, what's this guy, Sudi? Let him be a good student of history. You saw what happened in 2012 in Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast. When President Gabo lost an election and he wanted to entrench himself in office.
And BAMBA was sent.
He even captured state organs, the Constitutional Council, where he filed a case and struck off some votes of Ouattara and said, I will not leave office.
And BAMBA was sent.
He was removed in office by UN forces, backed by the French army. And he left. In fact, after leaving office, and people should read the Constitution very carefully, he was taken to The Hague, charged, though he was finally acquitted, but he faced the law. The person who was elected by the people in Ivory Coast, Ouattara, was sworn into office as president.
Installed by Baba.
So
Why
when,
are you admitting that?
Okay, Baba was there and he played a key role.
You to stop, wait for elections.
So people like Sudi should not behave like they have never gone to school. They should read history. There is these stories of telling Kenyans that if somebody is an incumbent, he cannot hand over power.
No, that is wrong.
That is wrong. And I'm happy that my friend Kaluma here is backing me on that. If you are performing well, you will get us elected. If you don't perform well, you'll be voted out. In Africa, even in developed democracies, you know, 1976, Jimmy Carter, he was elected as a very popular president, identifying with the hustlers of America. But he was disappointed. In 1980, he was kicked out. He did one term. George Bush, Sr., did one term.
One term.
So we have to tell Ruto, one term is part of the game. It's part of the rules of the game.
But allow
if
him
you
to-
disappoint, you will do one term and you will go home.
Allow him to lead.
Who has not allowed him
Yeah,
to
you are
lead?
making too much noise on the streets.
You know,
allow him to lead.
You know,
All right.
my friend Kaluma,
We should get our closing remarks.
internet never forgets.
Yes.
You know, one day you'll be forced to eat your own words.
Okay.
Because you should, as a lawyer, you should support democracy. You should support democracy. We should support constitutionalism. If people cast a vote and they give you a very resounding message of sending you home, hand over power and go home.
Yes.
And that's what the president should be telling his lieutenants, that let's fight hard to win the re-election. But if we lose, in order for our children, our properties to be safe, we hand over power and wait to fight another day. That is the Kenya we want. That is the Kenya that our Gen Z want. That is the Kenya that we should, as leaders, fight to have.
Thank you. Let me just pose that particular question I asked to Honorable Dr. Nyikal, the issue of corruption and the e-citizen money that is not being remitted to Treasury. Where is it going?
I don't know. But if it is not going where it's supposed to go, I just wondered one day when I was in a small cafe run by Maseno University, and we had to pay through e-citizen. That's when I first came across it. I wondered, how does this money get back to this Maseno University cafeteria? Because when you are now doing the budget, usually it would have been A in A, but now that it is going directly, and when we are doing the budget, you don't see whether what you have raised is also considered. But that was that. If it's not going somewhere, it is. But about corruption, Dibal, you know, when we go into a lot of details, we lose the main principle. Now, we have only two sins in this country that if somebody can come up and sort. I said this in Professor Nyong'o's mother's funeral to President Uhuru. And he looked at me and later he joked and said, that may be right. If we can sort out tribalism and corruption, those two things will rise like a phoenix from the ashes.
And they work together.
You know why? We do everything, even these things of inclusivity, even these things of the economy not working, even things of services not working. One of them is corruption. We use corruption to to manipulate politics. Like right now, I'm really worried about the politics of 2027. There is so much money flowing around. The people who are walking around, you don't see the big businesses they do, they're not employing people. But they will then manipulate election. Now, then when you go to tribalism, that is how, even if you have a party, our party is trying. I think ODM probably is the one that is most national. But the main thing is still we use this tribalism to formulate parties. And when we are talking of coalitions, we pretend they are coalition of parties, but actually to a large extent, they are coalitions.
Yeah.
So that...
In light of that as well, even as we're winding up, the issue of empowerment, this money that is being dished out, was it budgeted for by you? the parliamentarians?
Where
is it coming from?
I don't know where it is coming from because I didn't see it, whether it's in State House, whether it is in the Ministry of Interior. I don't know where that money is coming out. Somehow it is. But I'm saying, if we can look at tribalism, we can look at corruption. Even this whole constitution, everything you see about it is actually trying to sort out those ones in the minor details.
Thank you.
So, but I want to say something about why I'm still ODM member, and I think the spirit of ODM, you know, whatever people think about Sifuna, it may be, as I said, some people are on the extreme, but he's talked the spirit of ODM. From the time Tony Gachoka was part of it. That is the spirit, and that's what I like in ODM. That eventually we are talking, how are the people benefiting? I'm now chair of the health committee. Why I agreed is that I thought, and I'm still trying, can I make SHA work? You hope that you've been given an opportunity. I'll see if I've been given the opportunity or I've been duped. Because if SHA doesn't work in my hands, then really I've cheated Kenya.
I started working.
I've cheated Kenya. Yes. And then about Jacom, 2008, when this country was burning, I was the only civil servant who could go around. And I was using Red Cross vehicles and their chopper to see how people were dying and how the IDP camps were. And it was terrible. But somehow, when Jacom actually agreed on this coalition, the thing just went shoop. 2017, again, we were really getting into problems. But whenever the country seemed to be really burning, he comes around with something. He came with a handshake, and then we got this. This time, I've seen the same. Something tells me, and when I've been with him, he feels for the country at certain times. And he actually says, I think, let's see if we can find a solution. To me, that links with the spirit of ODM. And I've told you, we started with the Constitution, which has given us devolution, which is working a bit. Then now we came to BBI. Then we came to NADCO. Now we came to this. If you look at what we are saying, the ball go and get those documents. They are saying the same thing.
Yes, so we are just talking a good game about the same thing over and over.
Exactly, because we are not sincere.
Because we are not sincere.
Exactly.
No, actually, we are. We are very sincere because after coming from ODM...
We are tribal.
And I know, no, that is not true because I'm a member of KANU. Right from ODM, right now, I'm running for the Nairobi gubernatorial seat on a KANU ticket. The party people say, oh, how can you be in KANU? BAMBA was there as Secretary General of KANU. Kalonzo Musyoka is still a member of KANU.
You are consistent.
I'm very consistent. Because you see, you know, in matters of style, you can swim with the current. But on matters of principle, you stand as a rock.
Yes.
So I will stand here and stand in Nairobi on the bedrock of my character. And nobody can ever talk to me about tribalism or preach it because I've never lived it. I've supported from Charity Ngilu to Raila Odinga, and now I'm in KANU. And I will stand as Tony Gachoka, and as long as I live, I will stand on the ideals of my character and the strength of what is right and what is dignified. And I want to tell this country and the young people of this nation that the Chinese proverb that the ox is slow, but the earth is patient. Do not despair, because there is a day when dawn is coming. It will awaken in the morning. And one day it will, when it's awake and all these things are gone, there will be a country called Kenya that survived the 2010 constitution because we survived the Mau Mau uprising and the Muzungu went. We came to the first liberation, thank God Jaramogi and the courageous guys that led it. And then we came to the second liberation, to the 2010 constitution. We will withstand all the things that are going on now. And I reminded the police commissioner today to remember that Major Hussein Ali went before the ICC. Please remember that he was a police commissioner and was charged at The Hague. I want to thank the TV47 for hosting me. It's the first time to be here to share a platform with my very old friend, Dr. Nikal, who I've known when he was a civil servant. He knows where we used to meet.
I know.
And we are very, very close friends.
You don't want to disclose where you used to meet?
Of course, Mugini is a pioneer in the second liberation. He's been there through and through. And to see Peter Kaluma here, you know, at least today sitting with a Kikuyu who is not a tribalist. Yeah. Oh my, wonders are never seen.
Indeed. Thank you so much. Peter Kaluma, your closing remarks?
Dibal, the e-citizen you asked about was started for very good intentions of fighting corruption by reducing person-to-person, contacts. And I think it is a good thing. The challenges with it are under investigations, and I will not disclose my position now. But really, if there is anything wrong with that system, we will deal with it.
But why is it being run by a private entity?
Number two, those are the things under investigation, if indeed it is being run, because that cannot be allowed. Number two, I want you to create a day, if possible, Dibal, with this team, so that we can discuss matters, election reforms. We just got IEBC the other day. There are a lot we need to do so that we can prepare in time with this, rising political stakes. And I think the time now will not permit it. Lastly, Dibal, I just hope, against hope, that a time will come in his lifetime when the country will reflect on what Raila has been to this country and how he has stepped into the gap when the country needs a true patriot, and thank him. And I'm praying for this not only for all Kenyans, but more so to our young people. I hear still singing, Baba betrayed us. If Baba did not intervene through this party ODM, you would not be having a country today. Possibly, you would be a refugee somewhere. You would not be in school. I want to request all our people, the media, the religious society, the civil society, that we will enjoy all these rights, but only to the extent that we have Kenya. Let us allow President Ruto, with the mandate he was given, to run the country. And I can say in my own assessment, more so at the level of national resources, we are seeing developments across the country, which in good time he can stand on to campaign. That is not to say people should not oppose him. Those who want to oppose him will oppose him, including our party. Normally, even if we were to go into a coalition, each party starts by nominating their own presidential candidates. So for certainty, let me say here, ODM will have a presidential candidate in the next election and other future elections. If it comes to a coalition, we will have negotiations, and ODM will be proud to be the flag bearer. If the negotiations result with a party we agree to go into coalition with, we will also, proceed in that manner. But let us talk about one united country. So we take it for all of us.
We take it to be your opinion, not the position.
No, it's not an opinion. No.
Because not an opinion. Of course,
always, even last time, Dibal, when we entered into Azimio coalition, you remember each party started by nominating their presidential candidate.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then you negotiate.
Thank you.
So we'll have a candidate.
All right, Okongo Mugini, your closing remarks?
Really flip-flopping. Mara is for Ruto. Mara will have a candidate.
No, I'm just saying allow Ruto to lead now as we prepare for elections. We'll see how it will play.
With clarity, if you tell us that ODM will be an alternative to the current regime, then we walk that course. Yeah, but when you are on show here and you are praising Ruto, you are saying...
You know what we do every day.
Let's give Ruto a chance. You confuse our followers.
No. What I'm saying, give Ruto a chance to lead as you prepare for elections.
And that's the worst position you can be in politics, Dibal, when you are not giving your people, the people you are leading, a clear message. You need to tell your people, when you kneel down to pray this way. Now, even if the priest wants to pray for Kaluma and our party, which prayers will the priest say?
He will pray amiss.
Yeah. You see, these things we need to sort them.
I'm always quiet.
We need to sort them.
We were strapped for time.
We need to sort them. But the young man called Sifuna is a fairly progressive young man. I think he's an asset to ODM. He's working. What he speaks resonates with a huge constituents of ODM. It will be the worst mistake to start harassing Sifuna or hounding him out of office. Our party is based on ideals of tolerance, democracy, accommodating alternative views. So let's walk the talk by allowing our Secretary General Sifuna to enjoy those rights.
In fact, he not exit.
Yeah, and there is nothing wrong with the people coming out to picket as envisioned in Article 37. Ruto picketed in 2007, and we got abroad, what was it called? That Nusumkate government in 2007. He has enjoyed the fruits of coming out to picket. In the US, you know what Martin Luther King did to the black race in the US. If it were not for those demonstrations, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that has benefited many blacks would not be there. So I want Kaluma to live here, fully converted, that Kenyans have a right to exercise their rights under Article 37, to demonstrate under Article 37. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Jikal, your closing remarks?
Let's listen to what the young people are saying, and let's not take advantage of their feelings to cause chaos. And let's deal with them in accordance with the law while maintaining integrity of the nation.
Thank you. What a trenchant discussion we've had. I really do appreciate you coming through, Dr. James Jikal, who is the Member of Parliament for Seme. We really do appreciate Tony Gashoka, who is the Nairobi gubernatorial aspirant on a KANU ticket. Chama. No wonder today you came with your Fedora cap, yeah? You're throwing your hat in the ring, yeah? It is very symbolic.
The national spirit.
It's the national spirit, yeah? Peter Kaluma, thank you so much for coming through, Member of Parliament for Homa Bay Town and the Senator of Nyamira County. This is Senator Okongo Mugini. Thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate you coming through and graciously consenting to just be part of this conversation. Thank you so much, and we're looking forward to more engagement here on TV 47.
You have not said when you are discussing elections.
The elections, yeah, I think, yeah, we prepare the ground. I'll communicate to all of you so that we can agree on how we can actually run it. But I want to thank you so much for coming through. Yes, thank you for joining us this evening, and stay with us until this late. We really do appreciate. Have a good night, a restorative night this evening. Thank you.